one way that's really good for keeping your brushstrokes really kind of free is I stand up to paint. When you're sitting down, you're in a space that is tighter. When you're standing up, I move my whole body to paint. So my arms are going to be going like this and like this. And I'll be scooching down. I'll be on my hunkers. I'll be stretching up. It's very much a full body experience when I'm painting on bigger canvases. And I also play music. So I sometimes dance and that automatically loosens up my brushstrokes, which sounds a bit bizarre, but it actually really works in the whole kind of process and of listening up and letting go. Hi, I'm Ciara Gilmore, and welcome to my podcast, Light Between the Layers. And today we're going to be talking about,
Loosening up your brushstrokes and letting go of control.
ooh,
Yeah. So the first question I have for you is, why do so many artists paint too tight and too carefully?
do you know whenever we go to school and we're in art class, you're taught to replicate something. So you're taught to copy something like an animal or a building or a portrait or something like that. So that type of art does kind of, to get it technically right, require you to be a little bit tight and a little bit definite about where you're putting your mark. So you want it to look like that thing. So that's realistic art. And a lot of artists who come into my classes, if they've been through that realistic art journey, they will automatically be quite tight and they're dying to listen up their brushstrokes. They're dying for their brushstrokes to be free and expressive and just, something so raw and fresh. And tight equals controlled and perfectionism and all those kind of like tight, 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 and abstract and listening up your brushstrokes equals, expansiveness. It's letting go, it's freedom. It's such a beautiful energy that matches that kind of brushwork. And whenever artists come and they are very tight, the first thing they want to do is listen up. And that's where I come in and help them with that, with lots of different strategies and exercises and techniques to do that. So yeah, it's pretty easy to do it once you know what to do to get there. And if you're trying to do it by yourself, it can be a wee bit difficult, but certainly with a bit of direction and guidance, not too difficult really.
But you mentioned there that like you used to struggle with that because your background before
Yeah.
doing this was realistic painting.
Yeah.
What tools and techniques did you do to loosen up, and how did you get to this point of feeling free?
So the first thing that I did, and I will talk a lot about this on this podcast, is the use of time to play and experiment and sketchbooks. So filling up old canvases, sketchbooks full of experimental work and just playing around. Pretend you're a 6-year-old child again and you're not worried about anything. Just scribble, doodle, just get paint from a paintbrush and throw it on, drip it on, splash it on, just be silly, have fun. What you're creating is this energy of happiness that I feel goes with listening up, the brushstrokes. When I first started to work with abstract, I was still a little bit tight, even though my abstract looked like they were looser. Behind it all was still me making it look loose but it being tight. But you could feel that the brushstrokes weren't genuinely loose. So I kind of had to have a word with myself, and I do this often, have words with myself when I realize that I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing. And I said, right, okay, what are you going to do to help loosen up your brushstrokes? The first thing I did was, and this is a great one for anybody, is just like get rid of all the brushes and just use your hands, your fingers, the heel of your hand, and just feel the paint. And if you don't like paint and you're using paint that is going to be dangerous to your skin, put gloves on. But it's just like immerse yourself in the paint and just dribble it and just squish your fingers into it and move it around the place. Have fun, be silly. And this may sound like a waste of time to people, but it actually really, really helps you to listen up. Another thing that I did as well was to hold the brush at the very, very end of it. So the longer the brush you get, the better, because when you hold it at the very, very end, you have zero control over that brush. So when you put it on the canvas, it's going every which way and you're not controlling that. It's just doing the stuff for you. And there's that lack of control can be very scary for an artist, but it's actually what makes your art abstract and what makes it brilliant. It's so fresh and raw and just uncontrolled. I just absolutely love that. Another thing that I do to help listen up with my brushstrokes is to use bigger brushes. So when you have a small, fine brush, you're going to want to do the fine details, but get yourself a big, massive brush, and it can only do big, thick, vast brushstrokes. And you're going to get a different energy from that brushstroke, than when you're using a tiny paintbrush as well. And tiny paintbrushes are great at the end because I like doing some fine detail, tiny lines and things like that. And so there is a little bit of a place for some kind of tighter work. But maybe in your finishing touches, in your embellishments, you can do that. But the actual main painting should be loose. One thing that I would do as well is just close both my eyes and just go, wherever the brush goes, and pop your brush into your non-dominant hand. That's another way of being completely uncontrolled and letting go. And I work quite big, so one way that's really good for keeping your brushstrokes really kind of free is I stand up to paint. When you're sitting down, you're in a space that is tighter. When you're standing up, I move my whole body to paint. So my arms are going to be going like this and like this. And I'll be scooching down. I'll be on my hunkers. I'll be stretching up. It's very much a full body experience when I'm painting on bigger canvases. And I also play music. So I sometimes dance in that as well. And that automatically loosens up my brushstrokes. I sometimes dance while painting. So you're getting the rhythm of the music into the brushstrokes, which sounds a bit bizarre, but it actually really works in the whole kind of process and of listening up and letting go.
Sounds like a dance that you're
Yeah,
doing. You're dancing, but also like what came to mind was like it's very physical.
it's very,
And
yeah.
you
So
can't
you use your
constrain
whole
yourself.
body. The more constricted your fingers are around the paintbrush, the tighter your strokes will be. And the smaller you work, the tighter as well. So I always encourage my students to go big as quickly as possible. And in that kind of exercise of going bigger, and then when they go smaller again, their brush strokes are looser because they've gone bigger, and they've kind of like lessened that kind of detailed control work, that perfectionism that keeps coming in. There's no room for perfectionism in abstract art. No. What I mean is that there is no such thing as perfect. There is no such thing as perfectionism, or trying to make a piece perfect. It shouldn't be perfect because we're not perfect and art isn't perfect. It should just be an expression of your creativity on a canvas through paint. Whatever energy you want to put in that is is imperfectly perfect, if you know what I mean. The more you strive to get it a certain way, the more work you put into it. So if you're striving for this perfect image in your head, then it gets tighter, it gets overworked. The more imperfect you can kind of be, the better, if that makes sense. It's about just making mistakes as well, because in making mistakes in art normally is where you find like a little gem of a technique or a gem of something's gone wrong. And you go, but look at that. That's amazing. I'm going to use that again. I'm going to write that down, how I did that, even though it was a mistake. It's giving yourself permission to make what you see or feel are mistakes, but there are no mistakes in art. You just you move with your intuition, with your process, with everything that you've learned, and your the power that you have to create, and that's what you do.
I love that line. There are no mistakes in art. That's powerful. But that's like that
I know.
just creates so much freedom then.
Yeah,
Because if you're
yeah.
going into like setting yourself, you're going into have a session of painting and you're doing the prep and the rituals,
Mhm.
but having that mindset of like, I can't make any mistakes.
Yeah,
What does that look like?
yeah,
What's the art going to be like? Because
yeah,
and it's the creative process because
yeah,
you can't control it. You don't know
yeah,
where it's going to end up.
yeah,
I just think that's a really powerful message.
yeah. In my course, The Intuitive Abstract Artist, a lot of artists will show me the work and they'll get feedback from me. But it's quite challenging as a teacher and a coach to give feedback on abstract art when I can't get into their head and know instinctively and intuitively where they really want to go with this. I can tell them what's not working in terms of balance or composition. And I suppose that's what they want the feedback on. But, what I really want them to do is to reflect on where they're at the moment in their own process, using the tools that they've learned so that I'm not going to interfere with their process in the middle and say, well, you could add a wee bit of red over there to the right and that would balance it up a bit. And they're going, but I hadn't planned for red in this painting. This painting wants to be like calm sea or whatever it is in their heart that they're painting. And this is what intuitive abstract art is all about. It's that's what it's about. It's not being exact. So, I love coaching and helping my students, but what I really, really try to do is get them to self-reflect and to ask themselves what story do I want to tell in my art? What feelings do I want people to feel? How do I want them to connect to my art? That's the type of thing that they do develop as they go through the course. They get more confident in trusting their own ideas and their own decisions about where they go next with their art. I hate critiques. I hate art critiques. And I know that in art college and stuff, you go in and you get you
Crits.
get critiqued the life out of you.
Yeah.
It's critique,
In a
critique,
group
critique.
setting
Yeah,
and
it's so harsh.
it's
It's
horrible.
soul destroying.
Yeah.
And especially whenever you've got this lovely artist who's just created something so vulnerable, so raw, and what they feel is like their best so far. I have to be very mindful of that and I have to be very sensitive to that. And I'm all about empowering artists, not crushing them. I hate that. Where you critique so much that you critique the confidence out of them and they're left on the floor. And, I may make mistakes now and again, we all do, but I really do try to be mindful that you've got when people ask for your advice, you have their self-esteem in your hands for that moment when you're critiquing their painting. And it's I want to empower them to self-reflect and fix their own problems, what they feel is their own problems, fix how they want this painting to turn out. Um, or guide it. Fix is not the right word because there are no mistakes in art. It's guide it to the final resolution of where it should be. That's what I hope that I help people with.
And then
Um,
have you ever experienced your work being critiqued to the point where you lost confidence?
yes, I have. Yeah, I have. Once in school, when I was doing my A levels, that was the first one, and then really working with a particular gallery, and possibly feedback from the gallerist or you know was thought to be helpful, but actually what it did was it made me question myself, made me question my abilities, my skills, all of those things for a little while, but it went on too long, the questioning, and I thought this isn't a good thing for me. So I had to work my way out of that situation and ask myself, well, you know, what, why am I doubting myself here? I don't need,
What were you
um,
questioning?
I was questioning the quality of my work, whether it was good enough.
And this person, the feedback that you gave you elicited that kind of
Yes. Yeah. And I didn't ask for feedback either, so it was unsolicited. Um, but in the art world, sometimes that's what you get, and if you apply to galleries, as a lot of artists want to do, um, very often, like, you'll get no response at all, or, your work isn't up to scratch, or, I was doubting myself at that point, but I got myself out of it right and quick with all of the mindset work I've been doing. And also I have this thing, and I don't know whether it's because I'm a single mother or I've such resilience that has followed me around over the years. And whenever I come up with a challenging situation, or a situation between, people that feels a little bit negative, I kind of like feel a bit crappy for a while, and then suddenly I just get this strength and I just go, I'm not putting up with this. How dare anybody treat me like this? But not before I've gone a little bit down here and it's affected me a wee bit. I don't do that immediately. I do that now, though. I'm more certain of my worth right now than I was a few years ago. You grow, you get stronger. Yeah, definitely more resilient.
get the confidence to be resilient.
Yeah.
Resilient, sorry, and like I think the courage piece is very interesting
Mm-hmm.
because I liked how you talked about like at the start of your journey, like you would have been down for quite a long time and then get through it.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that you're getting there quicker and quicker
Yeah.
and just like, yeah, sticking up for yourself and believing. I think that's the hardest part when someone else says something that's not to be true that you don't feel.
Yeah.
And then you have to work your way through that and be like, okay, no. But then there's a beauty in that because it makes you come closer to yourself,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And if anything, it's kind of a gift sometimes
Mm-hmm.
when someone is criticizing you because you have to be like, no, that's not what I believe, and this is who I am.
Yeah.
And I think that can build your identity as an artist of that
Yeah.
adversity because that's not everything's going to be straightforward and gorgeous and all this kind of stuff. It's like actually being an artist is it's very challenging because you've got your soul, you've got your heart, you've got your emotions, who you are as a person, you're trying to make a living, it's like it's all intertwined. It's not like separate. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. It's working through things, and having a little bit of maturity about it, and also reflecting on the situation, going, right, well, how can I deal with this to get me out of this kind of like low energy here? And and then also recognizing that something that you think you've processed is actually creating the low energy. It's still not gone yet. And I find that whenever I have low energy and feeling a little bit flat, just a little bit flat, once I recognize it, then I do the things to get me lifted up again. And that really helps. And painting is one of them. Obviously, music's another one. Walking outside in nature, walking with the dogs, chatting with friends, all those things to lift you up. Anything that brings you back to gratitude for your life will lift you up. And I love that. But see, I can now recognize when I'm flat, whereas before I'd be flat for weeks. And I'm going, what's wrong? Everything's going wrong. Because whenever your energy's low, you attract everything that's things go wrong, and more things go wrong, and it just seems to be snowballing. But whenever I recognize that my energy is a little bit flat and I'm feeling a little bit low, I go, right, okay, what do I do here? I've got the tools, pick one. Okay. I've got a couple of amazing songs that I put on. Goosebump songs. You put them on in the car and your energy's up, and that's all you need. You need to find those tools to raise your energy back up again. And yeah, so I think I'm talking about this because we were talking about what we were talking about before that. The having been critiqued or criticized or having something happen and how to get through that. Because as an artist, you're going to come across that, especially for new artists putting something on social media. That's one of the most vulnerable things that you can do as an artist. And I remember how I felt when I did that, especially with my abstract, because I was waiting for the judgment. I was waiting for people to say, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this? What is going on with you?" And people did. And I just went, and I felt nervous about it at the time because I was giving up this whole craft thing that I had been doing. And I just said, "Listen, I'm loving it. I'm going to get really, really good at it. And I don't know how long it's going to take me, but I was determined. And this is what I'm doing now." So there. And, but yeah, when you put your first post of art on social media, on Instagram or Facebook or something, I mean, you're so exposed to people's, you expect people to say, "Oh, that's good," or "nothing," or "that's horrible." But actually, people don't say anything like that because you normally will get, "This is amazing. I didn't know you painted. This is fantastic. How long have you been doing this for?" And so oftentimes artists won't even post, or it'll take them months and months and months and months before they'll actually show somebody their art because they're scared of the criticism and the judgment from their friends and their family mostly. Friends and family are the scariest. In fact, could if they could figure out a way of just letting strangers see their art, then I think they'd be happy with doing that because it doesn't matter, but it's the friends and family. And another thing that I will say to students, especially who want to sell their art, is that your friends and family are your first collectors. I mean, when I first didn't do started doing my abstract, it was friends and family who bought from me, and then their friends and their family, and I mean, a lot of my art in Northern Ireland, there's a link from a friend of mine somewhere to somebody who's seen it in their house and wanted one. So if it's not sold in the gallery, there is some connection with somebody seeing it somewhere. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And a lot of artists are so afraid to post their work and just get started because as soon as you post the first painting, the second one is easier, the third one is easier. By the time you've posted 10, you're fine. It's just same as doing any new thing. You have to keep doing it until it feels normal, but it always feels scary initially. Thanks for listening. See you in the next podcast.